Okay, so first of all, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to go into my Canvas course. Things that I'm going to go through today is I'm going to go through the gradebook, all the different functions in the gradebook. I'll also go through adding extra credit, roll call attendance and how to grade that, how to mute your assignments if you need to, or the whole gradebook. And like Adam said, if you have questions, please let us know. You can either type them in chat or raise your hand. So I'm starting out and I'm going to go over to grades on the left, and that's how I get into my gradebook. So when I'm in the gradebook, it's sorted in columns. The first one is listed with all the students, and if I go into my student view, it adds this test student. So whenever I view it as a student, it'll automatically add that test student in, which is kind of nice because I can go in and add grades and kind of see how things work. You can always reset that test student. When you go into settings, it's an option to reset it, so it takes it back out of there. But we've had a lot of people question what that means. So when I start here, to each of these columns to the right, when I hover over them, you'll see these 3 dots. That'll give you the options for that column. So when I'm in student name, if I click the dots, I have different ways that I can sort them. So if I wanted to sort the names a different way than it's here, I can choose a different option. I can go to display and change it. Instead of last name first, I can do first name last. And then secondary information, I could add another column here if I want to. And then I can also show inactive enrollments or concluded enrollments. We really don't use those a whole lot. If a student drops out of a course, it runs with Banner and it automatically takes them out of your Canvas course. If I click on a student's name, so if I click on Josh's name here, it'll open up to the right and it'll show me the information, kind of a quick statistics on Josh. It'll show me the course. If I wanted to see all of his grades, I can click on grades and it's just showing me the grades for Josh. So it's showing me all the different things he submitted, what grade he received, if there's anything missing. Go back one. Click on his name again. Other things that I can view by his name, there's a new analytics piece. So when I click in this new analytics, and that's pretty new, I think that just happened within the last month. It brings up the analytics and it takes a second to load. But here it shows me course grade, weekly online activities, communications. So when I choose the different tabs at the top here, it loads that data for me. And then I can also, if I wanted to download it in a CSV file, or there's also a menu here if I wanted to see different options. Go back again. And last, if I want to see his activity, again, I have to click on his name and then click on his name within this box. And this is where I could see his access report and his interactions, because we have a lot of times people want to see what the student has interacted with. Did they click on the video or the quiz? Did they read the assignment I put out there? So I could go to this access report and it shows me everything that Joshua's accessed, if he's viewed it, and if he's participated. So has he added to the discussion or did he upload to an assignment? So this is a handy page if you wanted to see their statistics. And there's more in there that you can kind of click around and take a look at. But just if you wanted to see that statistics, you have to click on their name and click on it again. Next, any column that you see within here, these are different assignments that I've added and discussions within the assignments or discussions. So the first piece I want to show you is how to set up group weights. So in your syllabus, if you have weighting set up, like 20% for assignments, 30% for quizzes, we have to do that to turn that on in a different area. I have to actually go back to my main homepage and go to assignments. And you'll notice here, I have it set up, but I'm going to turn that back off. You'll see I have 10% for written assignments, 20 for participation. By default, that isn't on. So what you would need to do is if you want to set, oops, I must have clicked wrong, set your group weights. I just want to uncheck this so that it's 0. So here's what it'll look like when you come in to your gradebook. You won't see those group weights above each of my sections, so I've written assignments and so forth. To turn that on and it's per course, I have to go to these 3 dots to the right of assignment at the top. And I have to choose to assign group weights. I'm going to check mark. And if I don't have any groups set up, like I have participation and discussion set up, it automatically is going to put an assignments group in here for you. It does that so you have at least one group to put everything under. But then in here, I can put in what percentage they're worth. And it tells me what it's adding up to, so I know I have to reach 100. And then to add another group, so I have the 20% for written assignments, 20 for participation, and 30 for discussion. I just click to add a group at the top. So I'm going to add in my next group. I'll call it quizzes. And that'll be 30% of the grades, so I have 100. So then any quizzes I add, I would make sure and drag them to this quizzes group or add them right under this quizzes so that it takes it times the 30%, however many quizzes I give. So if you're setting up the weights, you first go to assignments to turn that on, and then you add each group to add in your different percentages. I'm going to go back to grades. When I'm back in grades, where I'll view those percentages, so you'll see the different assignments I have, collaboration, training, extra credit. But if I scroll over to the far right, at the very end, it'll add in my percentages. I can drag and drop these. So here's participation, 20%, discussion, 30. So it shows my percentages, but you'll notice they're kind of unarranged. I can click on this and I can drag any of these columns where I want them to be. So if you want something to show in a different order, just drag and drop them. By default, your total column is always at the end, but again, I can move that to wherever I want it to be. If I want to see that at the beginning, I can drag and drop it and move it around. But then once I start adding in grades, you'll notice here, I have the percentage. Once I add in a score for that assignment, it'll automatically calculate with whatever percentage I add there. Okay, so next at the top here, if I click my gradebook dropdown, I have different views. So right now I'm in the full gradebook view, but if I want to view it just by individual, I can choose individual view and view it just by person. Or I can look at a gradebook history view that kind of gives me like a statistical view. Learning mastery is if you set up a learning mastery within here, you could view it by that. So let's say, for instance, if they have to master a certain skill to move on to the next assignment or to the next thing, you can set up a learning mastery within here and then you can view it by that. Under my view dropdown, so kind of like before when I was in my view for the students, I can arrange this column in a different way. I can do it A to Z, Z to A, by due date, points, or by module. Different filters I can add. I can add in my modules or my student groups. Right now I have it by assignment groups. And then statuses. This will show me, I could view it by different status. So if I want to see everybody who's turned something in late for that assignment, it'll sort it that way, or if it's missing. So just to know, you can view the gradebook, any of these columns, however you'd like. Well, not however, but with the different view options here. You'll notice I have my notes on. I'm going to uncheck that for a second. That is not on by default. But if you want to have a notes column, I'm going to select it. And here's my notes column. This is just for me. The student will never see these notes. So if I wanted to put in a note about Joshua, arrived 2 minutes late. That's just for me, and I can keep adding to that note. I can always click in there, add a date, and add more notes. But again, only I can view those. Or if there's another teacher in my course, they can view it as well. But that's just for my purposes. Okay, next we have actions, and I'm going to click the drop down by actions. Not a lot here. If I wanted to import, and I haven't seen this done a whole lot, but let's say you had another system you were using and you wanted to import the grades in here, it is possible. It's a bit of a process, but just let us know. Export. If you want to export this, so if I want to export my gradebook, I can export a copy of it into Excel. And that's really handy if you want to do some sorting and stuff before you enter the grades for Banner. You can export it in Excel. It sends you an email with a link to that Excel file, and then it has all of the columns that are listed here with the grading. And that shows me on May 1st was the last time I did an export. Okay, so moving over to the far right. So you'll notice all of my different assignments and discussions, anything that I put a grade or point value, I should say, will show up in here, even if it's unpublished. So you'll notice there's one that's unpublished, but notice I can't add any grades. So you do have to publish discussions or assignments before you can add grades to them, but they now show in the gradebook. Before, unpublished assignments wouldn't, but they do now. If I want to mute assignments, so if I don't want students to see while I'm grading, you can do it 2 ways. You can either do it by assignment, or you can mute the whole gradebook. So if I want to do it first by assignment. So when I go to collaborations training, to the right of any of these assignments or discussions are 3 dots. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom to the grade posting policy. And this is just for this assignment. I'm going to say manually. Grades will be hidden by default until I post them. So I'm going to save that. And now it tells me that that's manually, so I know. It used to be that little I with the slash through it to show me it's hidden, but since the upgrade, now it just says manual. So now when I go in, I'm going to add some points. So this is how I can manually add points into the gradebook. I'm going to click by each person. Notice now the I shows up after I've added 1 grade. So it didn't until I went in and gave Joshua a grade. So now I'm going to give the next person a grade. And click in here and grade. If I want to add notes or comments for that assignment, I click the arrow to the right. Adam is going to show you SpeedGrader where you can do it all in one spot. But if I click this arrow to the right, it lets me put in late, missing, and comments. I also have a link to SpeedGrader right from here too. But now that I've added everybody's score in, to release those scores so that they get a notification and can see them, I have to go back to those 3 dots and I have to post the grades. So after I go in, I can now post those grades, and it's asking me, there's 4 that are hidden. Do you want to post it for everyone or only those graded? So maybe you didn't get a chance to grade all of them. You could just say those that are graded or specific sections. But now I'll post these, and that I went away. They should have received a notification that they've gotten a grade. And if they have any comments, they can click and view the comments as well. If I want to set that up for the whole gradebook, so hide everything at once, that's up at the very top right, this little cog. So I would click into that, and the same like before, I have this grade posting policy tab. And then I would choose on here to manually post the grades. And this again is for the whole gradebook. So when I want to show them anything, I would have to go to each assignment, and after I've added a grade, post the grades. But this would hide everything at once instead of doing it assignment by assignment. There's also late policies under this tab. So if you give a percentage deduction for missing assignments or submissions or late, you can add that in, and that's for the whole grade book. Cancel out. I can always go and regrade something. So if I click on anybody's grade in the gradebook, I can go in and change the grade. Other options that I have is when I go up to those 3 dots, I can sort again, highest to lowest. I can go to SpeedGrader right from here. I can message students who. So I'm going to click on that. And if I wanted to message those who haven't submitted yet, it'll show me the students that have not. I put in my message and send it to them. Or if I click the drop down, that haven't been graded, so maybe I want to say I'll be grading this tomorrow, be patient. Or if they scored less or more than. And it'll, whichever option I choose, I've graded them all, so it takes all the students away. So that's a handy feature if you wanted to message, say, hey, you haven't submitted, remember to go in there and submit your assignment. I can also curve grades. So if I click on the curve grades, it shows me the average score, and I could curve the average, curve it on that average. And that cannot be undone, just so you know, if you curve the grades, you can't reverse that. And it gives me that little warning at the bottom. Setting a default grade. So if I want to set a default grade, let's say I figured out I goofed up and on one of my assignments, I put something wrong in and decide they all get 10. So I could do that and overwrite all the grades that are there. And that sets a default grade for everyone. And then I could hide these grades. So these have not been hidden yet. I can enter, change it instead of points. I could change it to a percentage. And then last, how I got to hide just those grades, I went to the grade posting policy and I chose manual. Right. Other options at the very top here. So I don't have sections in this course, but if you have separate sections, you'll see an option here under all assignment groups, you'll see section and the different sections you have. So you can sort the gradebook only to view a section at a time. So you'd see it listed under this top drop down. Or if I want to search, if I have a ton of stuff in my gradebook and I want to search for a certain assignment, I can just type that in and it'll go right to that assignment or discussion. Okay, I'm going to go back to my main page. The other things that I wanted to show you is extra credit. So a lot of times professors want to add extra credit in. So you actually do that by adding an assignment worth 0 points. So when I go into my assignments, I have one added in here called extra credit assignment. So you do plus assignment just like normal at the top. And I'll just click into this and edit it. I add in the title, so if I want to call it extra credit, and the description, but then in the points I want to put 0. And then display grade as points. And then of course if they need to submit something, I would add that here. But then what happens is when I go into the grade book, when I give somebody points for that, it doesn't count against the other students. So it's worth 0, but if I give somebody points here for it, it doesn't give Miranda a negative score or a wrong score for that because it's worth 0 points. So it's just adding extra into hers. Also, roll call attendance. So if you take attendance in your class, it automatically adds in something called roll call attendance, and it puts it under your assignment. So if I go on the left here and I take attendance, it automatically adds that in under my assignments. So I took attendance. When I go to my assignments piece, I see roll call attendance. Don't delete that. You can make it worth 0 points if you don't want it to count towards or towards their final score. But if you delete this off of here, you can't take attendance. So how you can do if you don't want that to count towards their final score, if you want to change what that's worth, if you click into roll call attendance and I go to edit at the top right, that'll bring me into where I can edit how much this is worth. So by default, it gives them 100 points for attendance. But if I just want to take attendance and then I have some separate assignment here where I put a percentage, I can just make this worth 0 points and not graded. That way you can still use this, but it's not going to count against them. So then if I save this, you'll notice when I go back to my grades, I don't have roll call attendance listed in here. So when I scroll, I have all of my different assignments, my discussions, my percentages, and then my total, but no roll call attendance. My total column, again, I can move that to the front if I want to see it at the very front, or I can move it anywhere else. If I click the 3 dots, I can choose to move it to the front or the end, or I can drag or drop it. So if I move it to the front, it puts my total column right where I can see it. Okay. Any questions about my piece of it before Adam goes into SpeedGrader? Okay.
Which I can address. So Brian has 15, 20, and 25. You will have to create a separate group for each essay. So essay number 1 will be just 1 assignment, and that would be 15%. Essay number 2 would be 20%, and essay number 3 would be 25%. That will leave you with 40% that needs to be something else. But everything, let's say within 15% category, will be weighted as a 15% total. So you can have more than 1 item under 15% group. Maybe you will have 10 quizzes, for example. So technically each of them will be 1.5%, right? And Canvas will do that math for you automatically.
Okay, great.
Yep, did that help?
Yes, it did.
Yep. All right, another question is, if I have 100 homework points and a student gets 10 out of 10 on the first homework, does the homework column show 10%? I'm trying to figure out how students can figure out the grade themselves. So when your students are in Canvas, they can click on the grades, but they can only see their own grade. They will not be able to see any other grades, just like Kathy showed you. So they will see that, I think wherever they are in the course, and correct me, Kathy, if I'm wrong, it's gonna be in a total column, right, Kathy?
Correct, yep.
As you noticed, Kathy was showing you there was A, B, C. So we'll show you when you go to settings, there's a grading scheme that we moved from Moodle that has a percentages assigned to it. So if you're between, what was it, like 90, maybe and 100, that's a, you still have to use points, but that's kind of as a quick guide. So when you go to settings, for your course specifically, it's under grading scheme. So you click enable grading scheme, and this is the one that I believe got moved from Moodle. So A is between 94 and 100, 94 to 90 is A minus, etc., etc.
Correct. So
that's not really what I was asking.
Okay.
I want students to stop asking me what their percentage is in the course. So if there's 1,000 points during the course, and we're halfway through the semester, so they've been able to earn 500 points total, and they've actually earned 400 points, is Canvas going to say they're at 40% or 80%? Do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It splits it up a running total. So would you use group weights or just points?
Oh, gosh.
Because if you do it just points, it'll show them strictly how many points they've gotten so far. So they'll see like 500 out of 1,000 so far. If you do the group weights, it'll divide that up into the percentage and show them, you know, there's this many assignments. Here's what you've gotten so far, received so far. So it should be an accurate percentage at their basis in the course of what they're at and what they've completed so far. And I can go into my student view and see if it shows that a good option there. Let's see here. So when a student views their grades, when I'm in student view, I have my link to my grades and only students can see their own grades. They cannot see anyone else's. But here it's showing me anything that's been graded so far, score 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Yeah, and it's showing me right now 100% because nothing else has been scored except the one assignment. So far I do have 100% because I've gotten, 10 out of 10, but it shows me everything else that's here, but that has not been scored yet. And you
that
can
is weighted cut. That's you're under weighted category, Kathy. If you will be using points, you'll probably have to do math by yourself and just assign, points to the assignments or quizzes or whatever, that you have in your class.
And you can turn the gradebook off so students can't see the options so that they're not always looking. So if I go under my settings here, there's a hide grade distribution graphs and hide total. So if you don't want them to see that total column, you could hide that. And I think that helps sometimes. So they just see how they're doing assignment by assignment so that they don't see that end total. It's just up to you, but by default, these two are on. So you'd have to click them to turn them off.
Okay.
So real quick, so I do think that if you're going to address Michael's question, you should weight all your assignments. And I'll say this because the first year I did it by points. I didn't do assignment, and that was the issue when they had a percentage, but the percentage was not reflective of the final grade because it was just adding all the points up. So if you do it weighted, and you have just different categories that are specifically weighted for whatever reason. So even if you have one paper that's 50%, create a category for that, and then the assignments, if you have one category that's a lot of assignments, create that category with everything, because then, if they have 3 assignments and they have a B on that, that's gonna show 80% or 85% or whatever it is. So yeah, my suggestion is to strongly suggest to do the weighted. I did the other way before, and it was a headache, and I started doing the weighted part.
Yeah.
Pedro had a question. Can you sign up different assignments to be different grading schemes? No, that setting that Kathy showed you, that will just apply globally to overall grades.
So I cannot do it individually?
No, you cannot do different assignments, graded on a different.
Okay.
I suppose so. One way to do it would be use the weights average. Maybe some assignments you want to be in, let's say, very important groups. So maybe you do 40%, but some other ones maybe 20. So that's one way to assign different weights. But if you want to be really, specific, that would be hard to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I was playing with that actually, but I didn't know if that was across the board or just by assignment, because I was trying to think about check plus, check minus. But then if I do that for one assignment, I can the other ones have all to be check plus, check minuses, right?
Yep.
It wouldn't. Okay. That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. So there was a question about the modules. So modules will organize your course content in a linear progression and become more step-by-step sequence for your students to follow, right? You can organize your modules by week, days, topics. You can also create the prerequisites with modules. So for example, students maybe need to do the reading, watch the video, do X, do Y, do Z before they can actually go to next. It's a different way to organize your content, because if you use modules, what we would recommend that you make all the assignment, quizzes, and discussions, basically hide them from students' view. So modules is the main course, sort of one of the main ways students will interact with your content. So they have to do step A before they can move to step B. Once they finish step A, they move to step B, etc., etc., etc. And they're fairly easy to use, but they require a little bit time setting up. And you can always reorder them and things like that. So it's a different way to organize your course content. You mentioned consistency. Yeah, that's a big factor, whether you use modules or standard assignment, quizzes, discussions. Now we're talking about two different systems a little bit, to display the content. Kathy and I have been working on actually like a template that we could use, but we didn't have much time to look into it. But Kathy and I started developing a template that every faculty can import to their course, so it just visually looks kind of the same. Did that help?
All right.
All right, so I will go and I will cover a SpeedGrader. Oops, let me just open this window quickly. All right, so what is a SpeedGrader? So SpeedGrader is a function within Canvas that makes it very easy for you to evaluate individual student assignments and group assignments really, really quickly. Now, it will display the assignment submissions for active students in your course, and you can access SpeedGrader through assignment, quizzes, graded discussion, and also your gradebook. And I'll show you that in a moment. So when would you use a SpeedGrader? You can sort submission by student and hide students' names like Kathy showed you. You can use rubrics to assign grades. You can leave feedback to your students. You can view submissions in moderated assignments. You can annotate things, suggest some changes. Let me just share screen. Oops, our training Canvas course. And we do have a little training assignment. Google Chrome, let me share it. All right, so I'll go to assignments. And there's one that is titled Canvas SpeedGrader. And that's where it was actually submission where I had to provide a document. So you will see on the right-hand side, I can download submission. It tells me all the details when I submitted it. It was on June 17th at 2:47. If you create the assignment and you allow students to submit more than one document, Canvas will always keep the latest version. So it will be hard to find the previous one that maybe they submitted it. So I will click on a SpeedGrader, and like I said, I can see that from discussions, assignments, discussions, assignments, or potential. I don't think collaborations will count. So I'll click on the SpeedGrader. It will just basically load my submission, which was a little test document which we uploaded. So on the right-hand side, it just gives me some info, submission view. I can do a quick assessment, so I can grade it how many points out of 10, for example. I can actually assign little comments. So I can type a comment. I said, great job, but keep working on it. I can actually attach a file, maybe with some potential changes or suggestions. I can actually record a video of myself. So there will be once I click that, I can either do audio only, or I can do a webcam. So it'll be a video of maybe my feedback to a student with a specific suggestions. Or what I can do, I can just basically do speech to text. So I know how accurate that speech to text is, but maybe instead of typing, I can just say my suggestions to that specific submission, and then I can always fix things later. So those are 4 options to provide some sort of a comment. So I can do video, audio, I can do speech to text, and I can also attach another document. I don't know why it's really taking a long time to load. Let me just exit that and then come back to it. Okay, so I'll go to a SpeedGrader one more time. While it's loading, I'll just maybe explain you some features. So Zoom allows me to zoom in and out. This arrow will basically make my window full screen. So enter full screen. This is a selection tool. So I won't, for some reason it's taking forever to load. So I'm able to maybe select a specific portion of a text, and maybe I can highlight that with a highlighter tool, which is, I'll zoom a little bit, which is right here by clicking on it. I can also add a specific comment or an annotation basically by clicking a point. So maybe I will annotate certain section and I can say something, for example, where's your information coming from? You're missing a citation or something like that. I can also type a text right next to it. So that's a free text annotation. I can strike out an annotation. So maybe there's a 1 sentence or 1 word that maybe doesn't fit. I can strike that out. And I can also free draw annotation, which is basically I can draw as if I have a brush. Maybe I can circle something and add little annotation or little text. So SpeedGrader is a really handy feature. What we would recommend if you're planning to rely on a SpeedGrader a lot is that you limit maybe the assignment, if it's a written assignment, the file type students can submit. So if it's a written essay, for example, I would make it .docx, which is a default file format for Microsoft Word. We run into some problems quite once in a while where students will submit like maybe some weird PDF or some other file format. Then you will actually not be able to preview that in a SpeedGrader. I also think for a very savvy users or students, it's a way to sort of buy extra time, right? Because they can submit whatever. You won't be able to open it or view it, and then they can say, well, I sent you the file, how come you cannot see it? And then they will have to resubmit the proper file. So we've seen it once in a while where students use that as a little buying extra time strategy. Not too often, but if you limit it, you will save yourself a lot of time, especially when we will have 3.5 week long classes. Kathy, would you mind? I'm gonna resubmit my submission just so I can. So while I'm continuing, would you mind? Because you have to add that option for the assignment, right?
Yes. Let me go in here. I think you should be able to go into it and just hit resubmit.
Oh, okay. Let me do it.
And while you do that, I just wanted to go through, there was a question of where students view their feedback. So when they're in as a student and they click on grades, so if you grade something, they get an automatic notification as well. But if they click onto their grades, and let's say you just added a grade and some comments, it'll be right in their grade book. Oops, let me go back. I want to go into student view so it makes
resubmit
here.
Sorry.
So I'm in student view, and they can click into grades. They'll see the score, and they would see any comments if you gave them comments to the right listed here. If you annotate on their paper through SpeedGrader, they'll have a link here that says view feedback. They have to click on view feedback. It'll open up SpeedGrader view with all of your annotations, or if you've highlighted or circled anything. They can also see it when they're on their main home page here. On the right-hand side, it shows them what they have to do, but also if they have something that's graded, it'll be listed here and it'll have a link for them to view the feedback, view the grades and notes. So they could get to it either from the right sidebar here or by going into their grades. And I'll stop sharing now so Adam can continue.
Yeah, I resubmitted my assignment and it's still loading for some reason. So I'm not actually able to show you those features exactly. Can you pull up my submission, Kathy? On your in a SpeedGrader?
Let me check here. So let me go back in.
Also, so each time you type a comment or specific suggestion, if I am a student in your class, I will receive an email notification that, you know, there's a new comment or the new suggestion or something like that too.
Okay, yep, so it's loading here. Here
Yeah,
it is.
I don't know why. No, I'm not able to. Yeah, mine is still loading. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
So it should show if they upload something in the middle section, and then your tools to annotate or highlight are at the top right. So if I want to add a point annotation, I can choose the color that I want to change it to. Wherever I click, it puts a box out to the right, and I can put an annotation. I click away. I can always edit or delete that just by clicking back into it. I could add another reply, edit it, or delete it. I can also highlight something. Choose my color to highlight. I can type text, free annotation. So again, wherever I click my mouse, it adds it. I can strike through. So if I decide I want to strike through something, and I think this right here, it's a PDF, so I'm not able to do the strike through or the highlighting. I can draw around something, and again, I can choose the thickness of my line, the color I want to draw around, and then I could do an annotation out to the right, or I can also use that too, and then leave a comment. And then anything you add there, students would click on that view feedback. It'll pop open like this so they can view the feedback and what you circled or where you've annotated information.
Yep, so that's SpeedGrader in a nutshell. So the question is there a way to turn off email notifications until I'm done grading? Yes, so when you're actually grading, or if you're in a SpeedGrader, you can just basically mute. What it does is basically students will not receive any email notifications or anything like that till you are completely done grading. So I'll just see if I can share this screen quickly while it's still loading. So if it's in a SpeedGrader, there's that little eye icon right here. So by clicking on it, I can basically hide grades. So students will not see the grades till I'm done. So you will see Canvas SpeedGrader, and I can click hide. So they will not see that. Another option is if I'm just typing points. Let me just exit that one. So if I'm in grades, and if maybe I'm just adding points, I believe that was in.
It's to the right of the assignment, the 3 dots.
Oh, 3 dots, yep. So let's say I'm gonna be grading this assignment. I will click on those 3 dots and I'll hit hide grades. So the same option will show up, whether it's a SpeedGrader or grades, and I can choose to hide it. The tricky part is make sure you will actually, once I'm done adding the points, I'll actually come back and then I will click post grades, which will post all the grades for me, Josh, Miranda, and a test students all at once. So then I will say everyone, or maybe only graded, for example, now hit post. And then students will, that grade will be posted. All right, let me see, there's some other questions. All right, was another question that I'm not seeing, okay.
Yeah, as long as they have their notifications on, when you post a grade, it'll send them an email that it's been graded. But if they go and turn their notifications off, which they can do, then they wouldn't see that until they go into Canvas.
Yes.
Are there any other questions at all? Anything that we didn't go over that we went over that you might have questions on?
I would also say practice. Oh, I was a little hummingbird. Practice, you know, go to your course and look at the SpeedGrader, look at, maybe look at grades just to become a little bit more comfortable and just kind of see the layout, how things look and potentially how things work.
The last thing I wanted to show is the resources. We do have a resources page out here that you can refer back to. So if I go to the CSB+SJU website, and we have these for each of our sessions that we're doing training on. Under the A to Z index, if you go to our instructional technology website, over on the left, there's technology training. And if you click that, it shows all of the different training sessions that we're offering. And then if you go into Canvas, it's broken down into Canvas grades, Canvas guides. And as you go down into this, you can go to the page for Canvas SpeedGrader. And there's overview video, some of the information we went through, when to use the SpeedGrader or the gradebook, and then all the Canvas guides. So this is a handy resource. And again, it's out there for each of the different sessions, just under instructional technology. And then on the left, you choose whichever section you want to see information on. Correct. If a student drops, it takes their grades. Their grades are removed from the system as well. We do have a test instance. So we could go in there and the test stays for 30, I think they renew the test system every 2 weeks. So if you know you wanted to go back and see the students' grades before they're pulled out of the course, we could go to the test site and make a copy of that.
All right, so the question is about autofill, you know, Moodle versus, so autofill is the option in almost any web browser, where it's Safari, Internet Explorer, Chrome. You can turn that off, and that just, you know, depends on the browser. Because sometimes when you start typing, it will try to autofill like your username or a password, or maybe the last value you type in a points to. If that helps, but it's more of a web browser issue, not so much Canvas or Moodle. It's just how your web browser interacts with the content of the web page.
It seems that Chrome works the best with Canvas. It's no longer supported in Internet Explorer. Sometimes Safari can be goofy with it. It just seems it works real well in Chrome.
That's true. Sometimes we have a really odd problem with Canvas. Let's say I'm using Safari, and I had this weird thing where I did not see any photos showing up, and I thought, whoa, I thought my page was broken. So I re-uploaded all the photos. Well, as it turned out, I didn't have to, because they were showing up in Google Chrome anyway. I don't know why, but seems like Chrome is just the most accessible from all the browsers I have seen.
Any other questions before we're done? All right. Well, thanks a lot for attending today.
If you have any questions, please let